grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's accounting lesson. My name is Mrs. Bella Macheta, and this lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. On today's lesson, we will be looking at our cost accounting. This is a continuation of the previous lessons that we had relative to cost accounting. So we will be looking at our break-even point. So by the end of this lesson, you must be able to calculate that. And you should also be able to analyze the unit costs and the break-even point and identify and explain internal control relevant to manufacturing. So these are the items that we'll be looking at today. Now, examination tips are as follows. Use the reading time effectively. So you are going to have your question paper and compare it with your answer sheet so that you are able to see what is expected of you when answering that type of a question. Then start with the questions that you master, meaning the questions that you can really do good in or do very well in. Then use the time allocation as your guide. Please try as hard as possible to use the time allocation provided there so that you're able to attempt all the questions, okay? Know your format and locate formulas from the formula sheet that is provided in your question paper. Remember to always quote the relevant figures. So whenever you're answering, especially in these type of questions, you must quote the figures as well as you are explaining your view or you are commenting on a particular item there. So it's very important to have the amounts. Please, grade 12, provide your figures to support whatever comment that you are trying to make or whatever point that you're trying to bring across, okay? So the break-even point formula is the total cost over the contribution cost per unit. Now, I just want to quickly highlight what the break-even point is. Now, the break-even point is where your income is equal to the expenses that you have actually incurred to produce this particular item. So you are not making a profit, you are not making a loss. You are actually making enough to pay your expenses or the cost of producing goods. So that is your break-even point. Any unit beyond the break-even point means that you are making a profit, and any unit less than the break-even point, it means that you are making a loss. So our break-even point will help us to determine how many items we need to sell in order for us to break even. Then we can start making a profit. And the reason why we also calculate this is to be able to avoid making a loss. Okay, so I've already highlighted the formula. It's the total cost over contribution cost per unit. Now, when we are talking about our contribution cost per unit, we are talking about our selling price less the cost price per unit, okay? So selling price per unit less the cost price per unit, and that is what we call our contribution cost. So it depends as well how the examiner will provide the information. So sometimes the examiner will talk about the contribution cost per unit, and if you're not familiar with the term, then you will not understand that they are talking about the selling price per unit less the cost price per unit. So just be very aware of this term called contribution cost per unit. Then, when you are commenting based on the break-even point, right, you need to compare the break-even point with the number of units sold and produced for that current and previous year. So the first aspect is that you're going to comment on the current year, okay? Then you compare the profitability level of the current year with the previous year, okay? That will allow you to get your full marks. Then compare the break-even point for the current and the previous year. That will award you just 1 mark. So just be careful. If you want to obtain your full marks, you need to comment based on the guidelines that have been provided. All right. So let us quickly go into this. Your comments will be guided by the question structure by the examiner. So it depends on how the examiner is actually providing the question. Sometimes the examiner just requires you to compare the current year and the previous year. Sometimes the examiner can require you to just comment on the break-even point with the number of units produced on that particular. Or sometimes the examiner can actually ask you about the profitability. So it's very important for you to be able to read what is required of you in order to be able to answer the question to the best of your ability. Now let us do an activity, which is activity 1. It says provide evidence in the form of figures. Do you see 4 calculations to support the comments and explanations required below? So what is expected of you? Do a calculation to confirm the break-even point for 2023 is correct. That's the first question. The second one, comment on the level of production and the break-even point for the past 2 years. Okay, so the first aspect is that we need to calculate the break-even point to indicate that the amount that is given to us is actually correct. Now I'll give you 2 minutes. Welcome back, grade 12. Now let's quickly look at the information provided for us. So you will see that the break-even point is provided to us for this year, okay? So we need to provide a calculation to indicate that this figure is correct. So we know that our formula is total fixed cost divided by contribution cost per unit. So what are we going to do? We are going to simply substitute. So our total fixed cost is 6,100,000. Okay, and then our selling price per unit is 1,813, and then we need to subtract our cost price per unit, which is given to us over here. Cost price per unit, it's given to us as 563. Okay, there is variable cost per unit, as you can see. Variable cost per unit. So then when we substitute the information as it is in our calculator, you are then going to get your break-even point of 41814,5 units. And that obviously rounded off will give us 4815 shirts. Sorry. Okay, so that's how we calculate our break-even point, grade 12. So the next question says, comment on the level of production and the break-even point for the past 2 years. So I'm going to only give you 2 minutes as well to quickly attempt this question, okay? So let me quickly just go back to the information so that you're able to see the information. And what are you looking at? You're looking at the break-even point with the level of production, okay, for the past 2 years. See you in 2 minutes. So let's quickly look at our information. So they said you look at the number of units sold and produced, and you are also looking at your break-even point for the past 2 years, so meaning for 2023 and 2022. The number of units produced and sold is 10,500, and our break-even point is 4,815. That is 2023. As you can see, we have made a profit in 2023. Okay, then we're looking at 2022. 6,500 shirts were produced and sold, and the break-even point was 4,267. Okay, so how do we then comment based on this? Because we are making a profit on both instances. However, there is certain things that are different or that we need to highlight on. Okay, what are we highlighting on? In order for you to be able to get your full marks, okay, you need to comment saying the following: the business has produced 5,685 units more than the break-even point. How did I get that? Remember, I said I'm comparing my break-even point with the number of units produced and sold, okay? So I have produced and sold 10,500, as you can see. And then what happened, my break-even point is 4,815. So I find the difference between the two, and then I comment based on that. And that will then help me get the marks that I need to get, okay? So the business has produced 5,685 units more than the break-even point. Or you could have said the business made a profit of 5,685 units. That's still applicable, ne? Or you could have actually calculated the percentage and say 54% of the units produced, we've actually made a profit on. Okay, or you could have calculated the actual profit that was made, because they gave you the selling price and they gave you the number of units. Actually, we could calculate the number of units. So this is an applicable answer. Okay, then we move on to the next one. The business made a profit on 5,685 units in 2023 compared to the profit of 2,233. Where am I getting these amounts? I'm comparing the profit of 2022 and 2023. So it means I'm going to say my number of units sold and produced in 2023 subtracted with my break-even point 2023. Then I go and calculate the number of units sold and produced in 2022, and I subtract the break-even point in 2022. Then I compare the profits between the 2 years. And then, or you could have said 34% of the units produced in 2022, you got a profit, okay? And then the additional 3,452 units were produced compared to the previous financial year. So that is allowing you to get your full marks. However, there are also responses that we can also take, right? That is, if your production is not compared to the break-even point, maybe you've done the production of 2023 versus the production of 2022. That will award you only one option there. So you're only allowed to do that. The production increased by 4,000 units. So you are comparing the two production units, or you're comparing the two break-even point units, and then you are not getting the maximum marks that you're supposed to be getting. So try to calculate using these methods, or try to respond based on the fact that you are comparing what the examiner is asking you to compare. The examiner is asking you to compare the break-even point and the number of units produced and sold, as they've highlighted here. And if you choose to compare the break-even point to the break-even point, it means that you're not necessarily answering the question that the examiner is asking you. You're actually just giving feedback based on how the break-even point has actually changed, but not comparing the two items. Okay, so then let us go on to the next activity. The next activity says the following: fixed assets. Explain why Les is not concerned about the fixed costs increasing. Oh, sorry, I said fixed assets there. I meant fixed costs. So explain why Les is not concerned about the fixed costs increasing to 6,100,000 in 2023. Quote the figures, okay? So what are we looking at? Les is not worried about the fixed cost increasing between 2023 and 2022. Why is that the case? Let's quickly look and analyze. I'll give you 3 minutes to quickly look at the relevant information and analyze. See you in 3 minutes. Welcome Welcome back, grade 12. Now let's quickly look at our fixed costs. So the question says that explain why Les is not concerned about the fixed cost increasing, right? So if we look at our fixed cost did increase. The 6,100 versus the 6,100,000 versus the 4,100,000, right? You will see that there is a definite increase in terms of the fixed cost. Then when we look at it, we need to also look at the relationship that it has with the number of units that have been produced and sold. So if we look at the number of units produced and sold, you will see that we have actually increased. There is an increase. So it's actually a positive relationship. Do you see that there's an increase there and there's an increase there? So basically, we are producing more, so then he's enjoying the economies of scale, right? Let's quickly look at the answers here. He's enjoying the economies of scale due to the increase in production, as I've already highlighted there. So we have moved from producing 6,500 units to producing 10,500 units. That means that there was an increase by 4,000 units, or actually, if we're going to put it in percentage, 61.5%, which is a relatively good increase compared to the increase in price. The increase in price is not 61%. However, the increase in production is at that level. Okay, so it's enjoying the economies of scale, or enjoying the benefits of mass producing. Okay, so then the next aspect is the fixed cost per unit. Now let's quickly look at our fixed cost per unit. Our fixed cost per unit is 581. Okay, and then it was previously 631. Do you see that our fixed cost per unit has now decreased, right? Or because of the fact that we are producing more. So the fixed cost per unit decreased from 631 to 581, or you could say by 50 Rand, or you could have mentioned by 7.9% due to the increase in production. Because we are producing more, therefore, our fixed cost now is becoming less. Okay, so that is the approach generally with these particular questions. Now let us go to the next question, which is the selling and distribution cost question. Now they say identify how the selling and distribution cost in total and per unit change over the years. Then the next question says explain 2 reasons why Les deliberately wanted to adjust this cost. Okay, so the first question states that let's quickly go back, identify how the selling and distribution cost in total and per unit has changed over the years. How has it changed over the years? That is what you need to identify. Now let us quickly look at the information there, and I believe 3 minutes will help you analyze what has actually changed between the selling and distribution cost in the past 2 years. See you in 3 minutes. Welcome back, grade 12. Now let's quickly look at our selling and distribution cost, because that is what the examiner is talking about. Now, when you look at the selling and distribution cost, what do you see? Do you see that our selling and distribution costs was 300,000 in the previous year, and in this current year, it is now 1,200. Now, what is the difference there? Obviously, you can see there is an increase. So that is what the examiner has asked you. Identify how selling and distribution costs in total and per unit, you see that, has changed over the years. So how has it changed? It has changed in total from 300,000 to 1,200,000. And per unit, do you see that significant change there? From 46 Rand per unit to 114 per unit. And that is what the examiner is looking for. So the total selling and distribution cost has increased from this amount, 300,000, and to 1,200,000. Okay. Then the second aspect, the per unit comparative figures, the unit cost has increased from 46 rand to 114 rand, and that is what was expected of you, because they said identify how it has changed over the 2 years. It has increased. How has it increased? Then you provide your figures to support your statement. Okay, then let us go back to the second question. The second question says, explain 2 reasons why Les deliberately wanted to adjust this cost. Why does Les want to adjust this cost? Why did that happen? Quickly give us 2 reasons why. As you can see that there was an adjustment in the cost. Why? Okay, let's quickly talk about why. Now, the reason why is that he wanted to be more competitive in the international market. Remember, he is talking about increasing the selling and distribution cost. What is involved in selling and distribution cost? It is how you are distributing and how you are selling your goods, right? So he wanted to be more competitive in the international market. He wanted to reach a wider market. So what is selling and distribution cost? Sometimes it's talking about advertising. Sometimes it's talking about how you're distributing your goods. Then for more affordable prices overseas, to customers, customers will be prepared to pay, and then you needed to spend more to take into account the exchange rates. That's the truth. And then anticipating more expensive shipping costs and custom duties, because obviously we are selling and distributing. So then we need to ensure that when we are distributing, we are not necessarily distributing in the particular country, but we're actually exposing ourselves to other markets as well, and hence why our selling and distribution costs have now went up. Okay, so then let's quickly go to the next activity. The next activity is talking about the following. It says, refer to information A and C. Let's make specific decisions to improve the business and its product, right? Explain how the decisions he took have benefited the business by providing the following. The first aspect that you need to provide 2 separate points relating to the raw material. So let me quickly phrase this question accordingly, right? Explain how the decisions that he took have benefited the business relating to raw material. That's the first question that I'd like you to answer. Then the second question is, explain how the decisions he took have benefited the business by relating to the direct labor. So let's quickly look at the information and then we can start talking. Okay. So here's the information. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to quickly analyze this information and give me feedback. So then I will see you in 5. Welcome back, grade 12. Now let's quickly look. Les's general strategic decisions with effect of 1 May 2023. Les decided to improve the quality of the shirts to be more competitive and to export to retailers in other countries, right? He changed to a new supplier of the fabric, which is the raw material. That's what we are looking at. And employed highly skilled creative workers to replace the workers who resigned or retired. Factory overheads for 2023 included a training program for factory workers, right, worth 600,000, and hiring of equipment with the latest technology for 1.4 million per year. Information C states, Les undertook a short course of managerial accounting to enable him to analyze the production cost more effectively every month. He has analyzed the following production costs. So for raw materials, the cost for the fabric was 110 in the previous year, and it has increased to 200. Okay, the meters of fabric per shirt, including the wastage, right? The employees use 2,5, right? And then in this current year, it is 1,8 meters. Okay, that is the fabric and the per shirt. Okay, then fabric used in meters, it is 43,200 in meters, and over here 44,000 in meters. Now we need to then comment based on that because we are looking at the raw material. Okay, so the first things first, what is it? Explain how the decision he took benefited. Okay, how did it benefit the business? First things first, prepared to pay a higher price for a better quality material to produce a better quality. That is what you had, because one thing you had to identify is the different points explained. So the first thing is that the decision that he made was the following. He decided to pay a higher price for a better quality. So provide the figures to support this point. He paid 200 Rand, right, per meter. And in the previous year, he was only paying 110, okay? So he's buying 81.2 meters, 81.2% per meter or more, okay? Then the second aspect, he increased the price. Well, increasing the price did not deter or discourage customers from buying new shirts. Why? Obviously, they are of a better quality. Okay, so 4,000 more shirts were sold. Selling price increased from 1,430 to 1,830. Now, if you quickly look, let's go back. Oh, that is actually in the previous information, but you have the information in front of you, so you will see that the price increase did not really change the number of shirts that were actually bought. In fact, we sold 4,000 more, as we've already highlighted in the previous activities. Now, good quality material resulted in less wastage in production. Okay, so as you can see that we only used 1.8 meters per shirt, while previously we were using more than that. We were actually using 2.5 meters. So it has improved the wastage. We are not spending so much money, or rather we are not using so much material to produce a shirt. Okay, so that is the decisions that the owner made that are relatively working very well for the business. Now to the next question. The next question says that you need to explain how the decisions that he took benefited, resulting or relating to the direct labor. So I'm at the direct labor. You will see the number of direct labors are as follows. We had 15 in the previous year. We have 12 currently. The average wages per worker is 64,000 in the previous year. In the current year, 78,000. The hours per work per year, it's the same, as you can see. Then the hours worked by all workers, it has decreased in the previous year. Do you see that? The average number of shirts produced per worker. Now, this is where the change is. Do you see this, grade 12? So you need to be able to actually read the information and analyze what is happening over there. As much as we had a lot of workers in the previous year, and also the hours worked were more, but they were producing less shirts compared to this year. Okay, so let's quickly comment based on that. Les made a decision to hire better. Recruitment and training resulted in more motivated and efficient workforce. Because remember, they said that the owner decided to replace the old workers that had resigned, or let's quickly go back. I want to use the perfect wording that they used there. They said that he used he replaced the workers who resigned or retired, right, with highly skilled and creative workers. That was his recruitment strategy. Okay, this decision that he made helped him to do the following: to improve the workforce, and therefore they produced 4,000 units more. Okay, so he also invested in equipment and trained the workers, resulting in the reduced labor costs. Obviously, as you saw, that the labor costs are not as much as the previous year. So direct labor costs decreased from 24,000, basically, or decreased by 24,000. Sorry about that. Then the third aspect, he decreased the number of workers and paying a higher average wage in recognition of skills led by better performance in production. So obviously, when you're getting workers that are a little bit more skilled, you have to spend more money. But that decision that he made allowed him to be able to yield the results. So he, instead of having 15 workers, he decided to have 12. But these 12 workers are way skilled than the previous workers, which helped the business a lot in order to obtain the profit that it did. Then next, maintaining the hours worked per worker resulted in the drop in total hours in production, right? A drop in total wages, but did not negatively affect the production. As you can see, the hours remained the same per worker. However, they produced more than we had actually anticipated. So these decisions led to a positive yielding, or rather positive outcome. So now the summary of this lesson says, read the questions carefully. So whenever you are reading the questions, be able to analyze. You will see that I've been highlighting and looking out for the keywords of a particular question in order for me to be able to answer it. And that is the approach that you need to use when you are answering these questions. Because it seems like it's a lot of words and you don't even understand what the examiner is trying to say. But the moment you actually look at the words that the examiner is highlighting, then you are able to know how to approach the question and what is expected of you. So this helps you to identify the information required from you. So when you read, have a highlighter, have a pen, look at the keywords that are asked in that particular question so that you can answer the question to the best of your ability. Then remember the following, that your variable costs refers to the costs that change based on the number of units produced, okay? E.g., your direct material cost, your direct labor cost, and your selling and distribution cost. As you've seen on the table, it was highlighted that way. Then the next aspect that you need to remember is that your fixed cost refers to the cost that remained the same regardless of the amount of goods produced. So such as factory overheads and administrative costs. So you must remember the definitions for these two. That makes it very easy for you to identify certain things that are needed when the examiner is asking certain questions. Okay. Then, when commenting on the break-even point, compare the break-even point with the number of units produced and sold. That is the first point that you're going to start at. But obviously, looking at the keywords, remember you must read. So when you see those keywords, then you'll be able to know what you need to do and how you need to answer the question. And then sometimes the examiner can talk about you comparing the break-even point with the break-even point. So you must read so that you're able to maximize the amount of marks that you are going to get overall. Okay. And also pay attention to the mark allocation that is given in your question paper so that you can answer the question and get all the marks that you should be getting. Okay, so obviously I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. I'm going to give you some activities to do so that you are able to master these concepts, right? So here are the questions. You're expected to calculate the break-even point, which you know by now. Then you have to identify 2 items that may have contributed to the increase. You see, the increase in what? Cost of production per unit. So what are you looking for? 2 items. Do you see? Now you'll be able to answer the questions accordingly. Then it says, explain whether the new Sterlet bulbs were a good idea or not. And that requires you to analyze the information that's given to you. Okay? Then there's the information provided for you. You've got the Orion and you've got the Starlet. Then you can answer that to the best of your ability. Good luck for your exams and always do your best. Thank you so much for joining this lesson, and I will see you at a later stage. Have a good one.